I'm always so nervous when I do this. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Goblin Salvage Rights.
Whose rights? Your rights and our rights.
My name's Robert.
I'm Eric.
And today's episode is covering this bad boy, the Book of the Dead.
That's the fancy version. I've got the ghetto version with actual art on the cover because
Honestly,
that's
yeah.
me.
Honestly, I wish the art was cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's one thing 5th edition does right, is their special edition books.
Yeah. Oh, someday.
They're
someday.
so pretty.
But yeah, they're both legit.
So we've done something kind of weird. We've broken down the book into different categories and kind of decided to pick our favorite parts from those categories. The categories are archetype, heritage, meaning like a background, item, monster, and feat.
Yeah, that was certainly the intent.
Yeah.
And I mostly stuck to that, but I deviated at some point.
That's
and
right.
I think that should create enough variety for this to be a worthwhile, actionable list.
We are creatures of chaos, after all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So if you're digging the show and really vibing, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can get monetized. So it'd be rad if you could smash the like button. The like button and the subscribe button. We need 1,000 subscribers to start making money on YouTube. So that'd be cool. If you want to give us some money of yours, that'd be rad too. We got a Patreon. $5 tier gets you access to our Discord. You get direct input onto what we make, what we cover, what we make episodes about. We talk about the way we make our sausage. We discuss like
a lot of weird sausage gets made behind the curtains.
A lot of weird sausage on that Discord. And also we're trying to make sausage only videos on Patreon.
Everything he said is true.
Yeah. So check it out. If you want to support the channel even more, that'd be freaking rad. But before we jump into the topic, tell me about what you played, Mr. Eric.
All right. This is a weird one for me. So I ran a game this past week, Edgewatch. Nobody's surprised there. It's hard for me to talk about because I was polarized within myself at the results of the game. In fact, I think you even said, well, that was certainly a type of game.
Yeah. It was a first for me. I had never played a game of Pathfinder before where I didn't roll a single dice.
For 5 hours, you didn't roll one die.
5 hours.
Yeah. And it's not like there was a lot of dead air at the table.
There was.
In fact, I think I kind of bludgeoned people over the head with information.
There was no dead air.
It was jam-packed for 5 hours.
All of that air was living.
I almost lost my voice at the end of that session. But yeah, the die rolls were a minimum, which was weird because my intent was to have a 5-hour session long combat. And my apologies.
It's okay.
We'll get it next time.
We'll get it next time.
So yeah, what did I run last time? I tried to. So for a year now, you guys have come across this entire motley crew of NPCs, this rogues gallery, like dozens of NPCs running around, and many of the NPCs are individual to each of the players. Other NPCs are specific to couples of players, and yet more NPCs sort of are involved in all of you guys together. And I've been asking a lot of you guys to draw lines between your relationships with these different NPCs and the A plot in the actual books themselves. So what I tried to do this time was take a bunch of disparate NPCs and then bring them all together in a singular scene so that people will go, oh, that's how they're connected.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they have the same goals. I've got a review in my mind the last 18 months of this game. All of a sudden, everything's connected, just like the meme guy. And it was quite ambitious. The thing I didn't take into account was only one of the characters was actually at the physical location where all these NPCs gathered. So I was playing with a lot of dramatic irony. So now like 4 out of the 5 of you get to know what happens there as players, but as characters, you don't. And the character that was there, the party monk, now has access to all of this super specific personal information that's relevant to individual characters. And what that player is going to do with it, I don't know.
And it's really important to state that like some tables this won't work at.
Sure, absolutely.
Because like
polarizing.
If you don't have players that can separate their player knowledge really well from their character knowledge, then you're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah, and it might just be hard because it's a different kind of experience and you've got to exercise that muscle. It might just be like alienating. People just might not have fun.
Yeah.
If you're sitting at a table for 5 hours and you're not rolling a die, but you're still, proactively interacting with scenes, because all of you guys got scenes throughout the entire session, but one player at the monster scenes. So it was almost like watching somebody else's story. You got to watch the Monks movie, but that movie was about you and you couldn't participate in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like to say, run the game you want to see in the world. I want to play in that game. So I love dramatic irony. I love watching other people's stories unfold. And all of a sudden I get a piece of that other character's story. So it was an ambitious thing. I'm not convinced I pulled it off, but I
definitely think you did.
I saw like Jacques and Tyler both felt overloaded by the end of it. And,
oh, really?
And yeah, by the end of the session. And we went and did
yeah, you guys went and like did like a post-session chill out. They they hung out for like 12 hours that day.
Yeah, it was one of those awesome sessions where it was massive in all the best and worst ways.
I had to go home
and everybody was exhausted by the end of it.
Yeah, I had to go home and be an adult. And after the game that was like 7 hours long or something like that.
Fuck that. I went out and smoked afterwards. We needed the decompression.
Yeah. So. But then you had like a decompression at like a hookah lounge.
Yeah.
For another 5 hours.
It was cool. There was planar stuff. There was prime materials stuff. There was Chilaxian devil stuff. There was assassin sisterhood stuff. There was Barley Brambles, got a shitty family situation stuff. Everything kind of like came together in this delicious Gordian knot that needs to be, undone at some point. And yet no die rolls were done by your character.
Yeah.
And I gave everybody like a 2-hour block of in-game time to go do things so that they could participate. Mm-hmm. And that was the frame for the monks scenes. It was big. I've never done that before. I don't even think I'm explaining it very well.
It's a hard thing to explain, frankly.
Yeah, it really is. But I'd love to somehow find a way to put it down on paper and then put it maybe into like a small pod.
Yeah.
Just to like say, this is yet another way you can frame your sessions that will work for some players and won't work for other players.
That sounds like the kind of long form piece of content that wouldn't really do well on YouTube. But you know where it would do well on? Patreon. The other game we played was the beginning to Kingmaker.
Oh God, we had our session 0 for that.
Yeah.
And I'm still over the moon about that.
I'm fucking hyped.
Yeah.
So I've put my custom evil campaign on hold, and because I'm like way too overloaded with time.
Sure.
And I've decided to run an AP. Everyone voted, and they voted on Kingmaker.
Yep.
I really wanted to run a Pathfinder 2nd Edition AP to really understand how the designers want the game to be run.
Just hone in on the framework and how it's all put together. Sure.
Exactly. I figured,
and it's classic and it's a hex crawl, and we haven't really done hex crawls in our group.
And it's a hex crawl for like the first third or half of it. And then the other half turns into a completely different game. And then there's a bunch of dungeon crawls sprinkled in, and it's got everything.
It's like a greatest hits of like the last 40 years of game design.
Absolutely.
And it's been redone in 2nd edition because this thing came out in 1st edition first, and the rules were complete, but I think they're streamlined and super elegant now.
Yeah. From what I've read so far, it's really good. And I haven't read that much. It's been sitting on my bedside table every night. Instead of like scrolling on my phone, I just thumb through it.
And it's a chunky boy.
It's so fat. And then there's like additional books to it. And
yeah, there's a whole book for NPCs.
They really
and camping rules.
Oh my
Campfire rules.
They went full hog.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
they cannot wait.
Yeah. So I'm pretty stoked. We've got one of the other things I really liked is the party got together and they kind of decided to make a good cohesive party. One of the things I really harp on and something I really want to make a video about one day is the way that Pathfinder is balanced. So Pathfinder 2nd edition is now really balanced around
party roles.
Yeah,
more so than
it's balanced around the entire party's ability to work together cohesively than it is individual powerhouses.
Yep. Synergy.
There's a setup and payoff system, and what's cool about that is when you build your party to be cohesive in that way, the DM can relax a little when it comes to the encounter design and making sure things are balanced. Obviously, I'm running something from a book, but I'm going to have to worry less about killing you guys accidentally.
Yeah, when I was running 5th edition D&D, the whole Ravenloft thing, it was
all over.
I worried about that every single session.
And to be fair,
it took up so much space and energy in my head. I couldn't lean on the rules.
Yeah,
the rules leaned on me.
To be fair, in Ravenloft, it kind of played to your hand in a lot of ways too, because Ravenloft's supposed to be like scary and like everything is supposed to be deadly and stuff like that. or at least it's supposed to feel that way.
Yeah, it's hard too when everybody has access to infinite magical cantrips. And,
that's true.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not here to shit talk 5e. But
so what I like about it is, we've got a party. We've got like a rogue who's going to be dealing damage, focused on dealing damage. We've got a barbarian who's going to be focused on
a rage healer,
bruising, and actually being a foil for the rogue, if you think about it.
Sure.
Their characters are tied together in a relationship. And then I've got you playing.
I'm playing a fighter going into druid.
Right. So we got a frontline bruiser. Erik is running some secret sauce of mine that I cooked up. It's a sweet little piece of kit. It's basically, we play with the free archetype variant, as you're probably well aware now. It's mainline fighter with the druid archetype, basically through a combination of picking your order and wild shaping, you get a stupid attack bonus.
Yeah.
By 4th level, your attack bonus is like 4 higher than it's supposed to be, which is kind of game breaking. So I'm really excited to see what you do with it, considering you roll so badly.
I want to play it fast because at some point they're going to errata the fighter.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Absolutely
I've been wondering since the beginning of this edition, because the fighter has always been just like a step ahead of everybody else.
The game, in my opinion, is designed around the fact that the fighter is as strong as it. The fighter sets a bar that no one shall be able to go above when it comes to
nobody reaches
the range. Well, they do. The gunslinger does. So the fighter sets the top end of to hit modifiers, generally speaking, in the game.
That's going to be me, and that's going to be so exciting.
It's going to be awesome.
Finally hit things.
Exactly. So when because Erik is notoriously bad at rolling, so when
it's not my fault.
It's not his fault at all. It's just he's cursed to be.
Math doesn't work with me.
He's cursed to be a forever DM. Is really what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got you being another melee bruiser, and then and then Alex is stepping out for a couple months, and he'll be back.
Right.
So we're running with 4 players. Did I hit 4 players? Yeah, 4 players.
So, yeah.
Gabby,
can we count to 4?
Oh my god!
I mean, we're doing a top 10. Can
Jacques? We forgot about Jacques. Oh my god!
I'm sorry.
Jacques playing a bard.
Yeah,
which is going to be awesome. He's playing a hard support bard. So I think we have a lot of the bases covered, which I'm pretty stoked for.
Yeah, we're definitely going mechanics forward on this one, and kind of story back burner, just so we can get through the systems.
Yeah, and I feel like with a game like Kingmaker, it's going to be really easy for the story to develop naturally.
I hope so. Yeah.
Because of all the shenanigans, you're going to just naturally evolve.
A lot of stuff is just location based, so we can just lean on the hex grid.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's jump into this book.
All right. Book of the Dead.
Book of the Dead is an interesting introduction to a series of books that they're doing. It's a little bit of A, a little bit of B, and a little bit of C. So it has player options in it. It has DM options in it. And then it has a full-blown like adventure in it.
It does.
It's crazy. It's got a little bit of something for everyone.
And everything you just said, plus a few other things, which we'll get to as we go through the list, gets me excited because it's canonically relevant to the setting.
Yeah.
And that anytime you can tie setting and mechanics together, which is what their focus is with at Paizo, with Pathfinder, that gets me hard. I love it. I just want to. So
fuck that book.
So yeah, they did a wonderful job. Can't wait to talk about it. So we're ranking these things. How did you approach? There's a lot of information in here. There's a lot of different kinds of information in here.
Absolutely.
I could have done a top 30.
Yeah.
And granted, each block of 10 probably would have been the same kind of grouping. How did you approach this top list?
I reached out to you and I said, what did you do? And you told me.
And I totally lied to you.
You told me via text message. Oh, I just picked my favorite. I picked my favorite archetype and item and so
like
on
a monster
and so forth.
And an NPC,
a monster,
maybe
a feat, and a heritage. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just do that.
See, if I'd have done like a true top 5 or 10 list on this book, it would have been like monsters all the way through.
Yeah,
it's like turtles all the way down, right? Only it's like ghouls all the way down.
Yeah, it's ghouls all the way down.
And that would have been a boring list. So I had to exercise some creative restraint with mine, and I had to think more in terms of categories.
And I think that was the appropriate way to go about it because
we'll find out.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this book is it's broken up into 3 major sections. You've got a good guys killing undead, and then you've got options for undead PCs. And then in the last half of the book, you have options for DMs, which is basically a bunch of cool monsters, lore about Golarion and the undead in Golarion, and then you've got an adventure path, just like literally a level 3 adventure. That it's basically there's this like Call of Duty there's this Call of Duty sub game you could play where like zombies are attacking this building and you're like shooting through the windows. I read the adventure and it's literally that.
Yeah.
It looks so much fun, honestly.
It does.
I really want to run it.
I can't wait to talk about it because it's somewhere on the list.
Yeah. Oh, what? You cheating.
Hey, we've got honorable mentions in here too, so it could be one of those. You don't know.
It's true. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll just get started off. The very top, I picked 2 for Archetype. The category of Archetype, I was kind of torn because.
Wait, are we talking about honorable mentions, or are you like on your number 5 already?
Oh, I'm just gonna jump into. I'm just gonna jump in and sprinkle in my honorable mentions as I go through each category.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll figure it out as we go.
Okay, sweet.
Start this party.
Archetype. My 2 favorite archetypes from the book are Okay, so what's interesting about the book is that Paizo introduced this idea of becoming undead or becoming a thing through archetypes.
Yes.
Through class archetypes. Or it's hard to call them class archetypes because of...
You can't now because that means a very specific thing.
Exactly. But so basically now you could become a vampire, for instance, at second level by taking an archetype feat for it, a dedication feat and so on and so forth. Right. So when I read Archetype, I thought to myself, oh, well, there are a section of archetypes for killing undead and slaying undead, and then there are a section of archetypes where you become an undead. Right. So I pretty much just picked my favorite from each.
Yeah. Yeah, archetypes are an honorable mention for mine. It didn't make my list. And I know, right? You'd think it would have, especially since I told you I was going to.
Oh my God.
I love the idea of monsters as archetypes, and I also hate it. So what I like about it is it opens the design space so I can look at Bestiary 1, 2, and 3, and there's a design space there now for archetypes that can be used to create monster and PCs. Mm-hmm. So if I can be a vampire or a mummy or a wight or a ghoul or a ghost, I got to 5, and I think there's a couple of more.
That's okay.
Death Knight was another one. If you can do those, what about like a slime archetype? Totally. What about like a Beatazu archetype? Just pick a creature out of the monster manual. We should be able to get those now that we have this framework.
I mean, to some extent, I mean, like, I think the idea here was that and
it'll be powered down, of course, because that's how it works.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, okay. So, like, all of the options, all of the undead options that are listed, you were a sentient creature that could reasonably become those things. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of canonical support for a sentient creature becoming a slime. But there is some examples of it. I mean, we had like a slime archetype alchemist in like in first edition. Mm-hmm. So I totally see where
we have a sentient dungeon and third-party products. So the design space is there.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting the intellectual buy-in, I guess. You know, how do you maintain that suspension of disbelief? Mm-hmm. I mean, a necromancer can raise you into any of these types of undead.
Yeah.
And it kind of starts with that with this book. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's what I like. I like the idea of the design space being you can become something other than just like a human or a bird person with a class. You know, now you can become these eldritch, undead, necromantic things.
It adds another dimension to character design.
Yeah, and I don't remember being able to do that with 5th edition D&D.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yay. This is actually on your list though, so talk about why you like it.
I picked Soul Warden for my fighting undead one.
Sure.
I am a simp for Pharasma, 100%. I've always been a Pharasma
unapologetic.
Simp. Absolutely. I just love the lore around Pharasma and Psychopomps and stuff like that. So when I saw that they're not only just like an undead hunter, but one who's almost like a champion of Pharasma, if you can think about it like that, you know, someone whose only goal is to like rid the world of undead. I just fell in love. I thought it was cool. And you know, the feats that are baked into the archetype themselves are really well balanced. Like I was really surprised, you know, oftentimes when you write an archetype to defeat a specific kind of thing, it goes one of two ways. It's either way too weak or it's way too strong.
Yeah.
It's either the abilities are thematic, maybe, but they really don't do much. So why take it? Or the abilities are just like ridiculous. Sure. And in that context, you are a god And outside of that context, it's like a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, they straddle the line very, very well when it comes to the actual design of it, while also keeping in with the theme of the Soul Warden and this idea they came up with, like almost like a follower of Pharasma who's doing Pharasma's will by destroying the undead.
Sure.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it also allows you to play planar stories, which exist in this part of the hobby, of course. I mean, going all the way back 4 decades. But there's something specific to Pathfinder's approach to the Outer Planes that centers around Pharasma and the cycling of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And where do atheists go when they die? You know, there are very large lore implications that will turn into mechanical implications when you use something like this archetype you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I mean, you get a psychopomp familiar as a part of it.
Yeah.
And what's cool is in one of the last APs written for first edition, you actually start as a dead person.
Yep. Tyrant's Grasp.
Yeah, in Tyrant's Grasp, exactly. And you basically go through these tunnels. There's this tunnel network that connects all of the outer planes with the material plane and the boneyard, which is in the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the secret network of tunnels, almost like the Underdark network of tunnels. And in the material plane. And I love that idea. And I love the idea of having like a psychopomp, like, you know, whispering in your ear, chittering in your ear, pushing you forward, and like being all eldritch and stuff. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, that particular archetype you mentioned, it has built-in stories, and that's where I live. That's where I eat.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you make a character building choice, it should add story space. It should propel a part of your character decision tree forward. It shouldn't be static. It shouldn't be reactive. It shouldn't be passive. So if you've got a psychopomp whispering in your ear, that better be relevant or the GM's not doing their job.
Absolutely. Exactamundo.
Yeah.
So tell me about your honorable mention, your archetype honorable mention.
Well, just archetypes in general. I like the decision space that it opens up, the possibilities. So vampires, ghosts, mummies, all of those, you can play the beasties now, and they all have their own psychologies. They have their own hungers. They have their own, reasons for being. Just being able to exercise that at level 2 is pretty cool.
So which one of the undead ones is your favorite?
I'm partial to the ghoul because I've been playing one in our evil game that we were doing. And I love the idea of a corporeal menace, somebody whose desires and hungers aren't rooted in the arcane, in the divine. They're not rooted in other planes of existence. It's right here and now. I'm fucking hungry, and I got to eat a sandwich every 60 minutes, or you're going to be my next meal. And what does that do to your game day? You know, your adventuring day. There's this extra layer of concern that your character has to have. I played an Azerketi in a game a while back, and I could only play it in that game because it was a coastal community. I needed to be near a body of water. That informed so much of my decision space. Being a ghoul, you have to take extra decision space and care. And all of my actions are leaning towards surviving, thriving, gaining levels. But I have to take care of my hunger. It's always there. When I'm playing a human fighter, I don't have that level of difficulty. My only concern is where's my next bag of XP. So it adds an extra level of concern on the player's part. It's not a beginner's tool. It's definitely more of what I would consider an intermediate or higher player.
Absolutely.
And then the GM better be on their game if they're having a bunch of vampires and ghosts and mummies running around, because we got needs, you guys.
Yeah, and I could definitely, this is another one of those archetypes that's probably better played as a group, you know, where everyone in the group is a ghoul.
Yeah. Or just one person being that, and everybody kind of like has to work around that.
But that would worry me. It would require a really good group of people, a really good group of friends, because what'll probably happen, especially in that ghoul circumstance, is the party will kind of warp around that one person. And if people aren't willing to check their egos at the door, it can become really nasty.
It can in a vacuum, yeah. But again, it's whatever choices are made, whatever decision space around character generation is made, it needs to serve the story the GM's trying to tell.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely a symbiotic relationship between player characters and GM stories. So GM characters, NPCs, right? Nobody exists in a vacuum. So yeah, I think everything you said is right.
Everything
That's
I
what
said
I got
is
to-
right, ladies and gentlemen.
Man, I'm going to eat those words as I get through my list.
So, my favorite's Lich. Liches are fucking cool.
Yeah, that's not a level 2 thing, is it?
It's a level 12 thing.
A level 12 thing.
Yeah.
So there's not all undead archetypes are created equal.
Exactly.
And I dig that.
Not all of them start at level 2.
Mhm.
And I really like, it's the only one of them that starts that early.
Mhm.
That
Late.
starts late.
Yeah.
And I like that they did that, because it would make no sense for a Lich to begin at
Sure.
level 2, but also it kind of creates an expectation
Mhm.
that in the future, when they want to create something like the worm that walks thing that I'm working on,
Mhm.
it gave me the inspiration to be like, okay, I don't necessarily have to start this at level 2.
Right.
It could start at level 6,
Mhm.
start at level 8. It can start whenever I want. And that's really nice to kind of like have that in the system as an expectation. So
And if I'm your GM and you tell me, hey, I want to play a Lich at level 12 and we're in the middle of level 3 and 4 of our
Yeah.
game session, I can build towards that.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And what I really like about the Lich was it's being a Lich, becoming a Lich is kind of one of these, like, it's, in my mind, it's always been one of these quintessential D&D
It's classic.
things.
Yeah.
It's so classic. It's so steeped. It's steeped in so much history within the genre of TTRPGs generally,
Mhm.
but especially in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Like Tarbathon.
Sure.
Not only Tarbathon, but there are a bunch of other minor liches that exist
Right.
that are like 13th, 15th level casters.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
You know, historically, the Lich has sort of like been a destination point, an end point. You're level 18 wizard and you do all your ritual things. You slaughter a bunch of people. Yay, I'm a Lich. Okay, campaign's over. You know,
Done.
that's the end.
Yeah.
But this is a mid-level build.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of road to go down.
I don't know if
after
I'd call it mid-level.
12th.
12th. I mean, most games end at 15. I mean, most games never
I'm
get
thinking
that
like
far.
in terms of like a level 1 through 20 spread.
Sure,
'Cause that's
sure,
what this
sure.
whole thing's built around.
But I think when we look in the context of what real games, where real games are played,
okay,
most players will probably never even hit 12th.
sure.
But if they do, they can have this as their thing. And then if the campaign goes forward, you have 8 more levels or 6 more levels of feats that you get to choose from, which I think is really cool.
And that's exciting.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. And what was cool is, not to jump ahead to the monster section, but like they introduced a bunch of different new kinds of liches as well. And that really opens up the design space for kinds of liches,
Yeah.
kinds of undead,
Yep.
which I think is really exciting because, you know, when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, like, how cool would it be to like make a time mage, make a wizard,
Mhm.
or like, even better.
A
Oh,
Chrono
my God.
Lich.
No. Oh, yes. Okay. It's okay. All right. All right. It's all coming. It's all,
You're
the
onto
bu-
something now.
The build is coming together in my mind. All right. So we've got Thessalonian Rune Lord
Mhm.
of, I think it's Sloth, which is necromancy.
Yes.
Or is that conjuration? So you've got the Thessalonian wizard or whatever, who then learns time magic,
Mhm.
and then at 12th level becomes a time lich, a Thessalonian Rune Lord time lich. And they
Mhm.
have a rune, I think it's got like a rune lich in the monster section as one of the other kinds of liches. How cool would that be?
Yeah,
Like,
as a player,
As a player, like,
usually that's the purview of the GM to come up with stuff like
there's
that.
so many layers. That
Yeah.
cake is like 12 different colors.
Yeah, there's so much player toolbox in this book that's typically reserved for GMs, and that's yet another reason why I love this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So yeah, those are my archetype choices. They did one more thing about the Lich. They did really cool things focusing on the phylactery. They
Mhm.
call it a cage, a soul cage,
Mhm.
soul cage.
yeah, that's
And,
a very old term.
And they have a bunch of really cool feats that tie into the soul cage
Yeah.
that I never really would have expected. Because like, where do you really go with liches? Like, how do you give liches more abilities? And I thought it was really cool that they played off of that and really focused on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned archetypes that are undead hunters,
Mhm.
and that's kind of on my honorable mentions. I'll just bring it up here. So on page 1415, you have these things called Hunters of the Dead. And what I liked about them is it talks about the various mindsets of organizations that hunt undead.
Yes.
And they're spread throughout the map. So you have sort of like this like Asian inspired organization and how they approach undead interacting and elimination.
Mm.
You have maybe a more Africanized
Mhm.
grouping of undead hunters. I think they're the Bright Lions or something like that. And just if you look
they
at
are
the
the Bright Lions.
okay, good.
Yeah.
I got it. Yay.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. So
I know
they were
that
like,
because I remember I prepped an entire adventure with
Oh, yeah.
Volcana,
yeah.
and I made the bright lines, and then we
Yeah.
changed directions.
Boy, Roger,
and I
you good
was
on that
like,
one.
Okay, here we go.
But yeah, there's like about, I don't know, 6, 7, or 8 of them. And it's really cool to see like canonical understandings of undead and just what it means to be around them, interact with them, eliminate them, revere them based on your region where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really big on anything that feeds the canon and keeps things kind of moving in that direction.
Totally.
So when archetypes do that, that's yet another added value they bring to the table. It's not just about the extra feats or the extra +2. It's about what happens when you take this undead mindset from this country and you go over here to this other country.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules change, the social rules change, the norms change.
Yeah, it's a huge piece of world building on top of having really cool rules. I remember if I'm correct, that archetype at like 4th level, you get to create like a secret base of operations or something like that, where you can like pull little bits and bobs, and it's like hidden from undead and stuff like that. Yeah. I thought that was really
Throw
cool.
a little bit of a leadership subsystem on there and
yeah,
get yourself a party.
Sprinkling leadership subsystem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So even that didn't make it on my list as much as I love that.
All right. Well, I guess we got to get your list started.
Yeah. I actually did a list, so I have numbers for mine and everything.
Look at this guy.
All right. My number 5. So there are certain passages within this book. There's a number of them, and they're part of the Grim Crypt. And the Grim Crypt is basically the bestiary within the Book of the Dead. And every now and again, you'll get a grouping of monsters that has its own little like 2-page spread, and it's like 4 to 6 separate paragraphs, each paragraph being on a different, different topic of the undead. And these topics range from psychology to how they hunt, the anatomy of that specific kind of undead, whether it's a ghost or a ghoul or a lich or a death knight, the culture surrounding being that type of undead, certain rituals that are intrinsic to taking on that particular form, how to create them, destroy them, myths surrounding them, true and false. I love that kind of stuff. Where they might layer, how they layer, different hungers, different compulsions that they might have. So, 4 to 6 different paragraphs on like how are ghouls treated in Paizo, and what does it mean to be a ghoul, and how is that different from being a ghost, and different tethers and shit like that they have. So yeah, my number 5 is that really cool 2-page spread that talks about what's it like to be a vampire, and that informs so many of the character build choices I do when I start looking at feats and abilities and shit like that.
I loved how they like changed the font and everything, and they made it look like old parchment.
It looks like an in-world relic.
Yeah. They did an excellent job. My only complaint is that as someone with like pretty severe dyslexia,
hard to read?
It's really fucking hard to read.
Yeah,
I have to like
get this on PDF and then have your computer read it back to you.
I like literally have to. I remember I was reading. Wow, I just opened.
You
up
went right to the page.
Wow, but like when I'm looking at this page, I have to like do the finger thing, like I'm back in grade school. You know what I mean? Because when I look at the script like writing, my brain hurts.
I went to school when cursive was an actual class, so that didn't affect me so much, but I can totally see where.
Yeah. I can't do cursive.
If it's not like Calibri Light, then it doesn't work.
Yeah. So your number 5 is those entries.
Those specific entries, and there's maybe there's like 7 or 8 of them.
Okay.
And the beasts kind of go from A to Z, and not all of the groupings get that. So like the skeleton group don't have that.
Yeah, they don't.
And yet they have their own ancestry section. But the vampires have it, the whites, the ghouls, the death knights, the large groupings.
Yeah.
And then after that 2-page spread that talks about what's it like to be a death knight, you get this awesome spread of about, levels 1 through 20, examples of different kinds of death knights, different kinds of ghosts. And they're grouped culturally and geographically around the map too. So it's not like you have, 6 examples of varying power levels of the Transylvanian Count Dracula vampire. There's different kinds of vampires, and each one's more exciting and different than the last. So yeah, that's a great setup for a grouping of monsters, and you can build adventures, scenes, campaigns around just those 2-page spreads to kind of anchor the entire story. And I felt that was worthy of my top 5 in here.
Absolutely. So next up on my list are my category is backgrounds. Did you have any backgrounds in your list? No.
How about we get back to that?
Okay.
You talk about backgrounds now, and I'll talk about it later. like far later.
Oh, why don't we just talk about it now?
Okay, cool.
All right. So the two that really popped out to
This
me.
is so weird.
You gave me this framework, Eric. This is your fault. You give a guy like me categories, and I just eat that shit up. So yeah, I really love, my favorite is just the Scion of Slayers,
sure.
because it's literally just Castlevania, right?
Oh yeah.
It's Castlevania, the background.
Unabashedly so.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. You know, like when we think of stories, when we think of the characters we want to play, a lot of times we draw our inspiration from pop culture. We draw our inspiration from video games. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's this trope.
Anchoring.
Exactly. There's this trope of the person who always plays the same thing in everything they do.
Sure.
And that, in my opinion, takes a little far. I think that's something a lot of players go through. It's a phase.
I used to do it.
Yeah.
I played nothing but rogues for the first 4 or 5 years I was playing D&D.
It's a phase a lot of people go through, and eventually they work themselves out of it. Yeah. If you're obsessed with Castlevania and you want to play
Simon Belmont,
then you can freaking play him.
Yeah. It literally gives you the build for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My other one was Willing Host. I loved Willing Host. Willing Host has so much opportunity for the DM to just whisper into your ear if they need to like push you in a direction, because Willing Host is all about, for the people who haven't read it, Willing Host is all about a person who can allow ghosts into their mind. Yeah. Their little ability lets them do an exploration activity as if they were trained or something like that. Yeah. But what's really cool is you can only do it for 10 minutes at a time, and you can bring these ghosts into your life. So like I imagine, the summoner with the ectoplasm, kind of like that's a big trope in anime. Having like a ghost behind you teaching you how to play Go, or the
mentor figure as a spirit.
Exactly. So you could take that a step further and just be a medium of sorts, where you have you've got a main ghost, but then you got all these side ghosts that pop into your life and kind of talk to you. And it reminds me a lot of the there's a series of classes in the occult book for first edition where they introduced like 6 classes out of nowhere. One of them I think was called like the Mesmerist, and then they had the Occultist and all that stuff. Yep. And it reminds me kind of like a hodgepodge of all of those ideas kind of circling this drain, if you will. I don't know.
The circle of the drain.
Okay, that's a bad way to put it. But so like
in a good way, in the best way.
Yeah. So like the 2 classes the class combos I had in mind for these backgrounds were for the Slayers, it would make a really good pairing for an investigator, because it gets an int bonus and it gets disrupt undead as a free cantrip, and that is specifically keyed off intelligence. And I can just totally see Belmont being an investigator.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It really fits, because you have to go into a town, discover what's going on, and then solve the issue. And then of course the summoner with the Willing Host, because it's just it makes so much sense.
This is going to be so freaking weird for me. So I guess we'll just talk about these as groups as they come up. My number 1 on my list is this. Okay. And it's backgrounds in general, but it's the rare backgrounds specifically. And there's 3 of them in this book. Yep. And you happen to hit my favorite one. So backgrounds, rare backgrounds, and specifically the Willing Host rare background. And one of the reasons why I love it is typically on a background, remind me, you get a couple of boosts, you get a lore, you get a skill feat.
You get a lore and
then
a
you
skill.
Get something else.
Yeah, you get a lore and a skill. You get a skill feat. You get bonuses. And that's it.
Okay, so for the rare ones in this case,
you get something a little extra.
Yeah, they take one away. You get the lore, you don't get the skill feat, and then you get something extra. And there's 3 different something extras, one for each.
Yeah, you get like a cool ability. Yeah. One of them is like actually really
powerful. One's a reaction, one's an action, and another one is a cantrip, I believe.
Yeah. So you get a cantrip for the Slayer. You get a person who's like, you were like born as a part of like a ritual, or conceived as part of a ritual or something like that, like an undead ritual, and you've touched the grave in some way. Your soul is bound to undead energies, and then for whatever reason, as a reaction, when you hit 0 hit points, you get to make a free strike, which is like really powerful.
Yeah, it's
especially if you combine that strike with a way to like take.
It's one last fuck you on the way out.
Yeah, or you can actually save yourself because if you hit 0 HP and you get that strike and your strike has a way to heal you through undead means.
Sure. Yeah.
The combos abound, but yeah, like that one's really.
I like the fact that one of them is an exploration action. It's not an encounter mode thing. So having like a rare background that gives you an ability that you're not necessarily doing it in combat. You can't do it in combat. That blows open some design space. So I think we need more interaction with exploration mode. I think we need more crunchy feats and background stuff that just has nothing to do with encounter mode. So I dig that. The other thing I like about all of these backgrounds, but specifically the rare ones, is they come with NPCs attached. You can't get one of these rare backgrounds without having an NPC there to make it so you had that rare background. Absolutely. You're either created as something, or you were trained to be something, or somebody did a ritual that involves you. That's story before the story affecting the story to come. So there's a history, there's a chronology, and just by building a character, you're already involved in a story. You don't have to wait for session 1. Your session 0 means you're involved in the story already.
Yeah,
and the GM has to roll with that, or they're not doing their job.
Exactly. Like when you think of most backgrounds, that's kind of like the way I read them a lot of times is this was your life before you became adventurer.
But like the barkeep background is so generic and like there's nothing there. I mean, who's the NPC in that?
Well,
who fucking cares?
I exactly like I got my I was taught by my great bartender grandfather before me. It's like, okay,
yeah, right.
They live in the small sleepy town that your character's from, and
or I'm just punching a clock at the local bar.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is fine. All this is legit. But when you have like what were there like a dozen and a half, maybe 24 different backgrounds in here in this book. Yeah. Like every single one of them comes with NPCs.
That's true. That's true. All of the
world building tools you're handing to your GM so that they can make you a part of the story, and you just can't get that in a lot of other backgrounds. So that was awesome. It gives players strategic options by selecting these backgrounds. It's proactive engagement with the story. It's not like, yay, I got a +2 to some kind of a lore check. Who cares? If you take like cupcake lore, is that ever really going to matter? If that's a part of your background? No. But if there's a necromantic cupcake maker and he brought you back from the dead, you better believe cupcakes and necromancy are going to be a part of the story going forward. And all of a sudden, that's my story too as a player. And I feel involved already before session 1. That's why this is my favorite thing out of this entire book. There are so many options in here that affect your character builds before you even hit the fucking table.
Yeah, there's only 6 regular backgrounds, by the way.
6 regular. Okay.
Yeah, and then 3 more. So it's like 9 total. But it feels like way more. Yeah. Like there's, Pyre Tender. Night Watch is probably the most mundane out of all of them.
And that one even makes me anxious just reading that.
Like, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Necromancer's Apprentice is a regular background.
And for starting gamers, this gives you a way to think about how to play your character. It's almost like there's instructions for RP built into these backgrounds for people who might need to lean on that sort of thing. And if you don't want to like reinvent the wheel with your character, then you've got direction. Absolutely.
And I just want to say there's nothing wrong with leaning on your background to make your character, especially if you're new to role playing or if it makes you uncomfortable. Like, I love more than anything playing a one-note character because I and everyone else at the table already knows probably where my opinion is going to be on where my character is going to land on something, and kind of being the pillar of emotion in a party like that is really valuable, especially for a story, because then the DM can lean and build on that expectation going forward, and then it's even more fun when you subvert expectations.
Yeah. I like not knowing. I basically like the opposite of everything you just said as a player. I like just the ambiguity of thinking I know where I stand on things.
Right.
And then I have encounters, and those challenge my understanding and perceptions of things. And that's how people shift around alignments and things get interesting. The one note thing is, as a GM, it's easier to work with if as the players have that sort of approach. As a player, I find myself just looking for ways to throw a monkey wrench into that and get people to react in new and interesting and different ways to progress, to evolve.
Yeah.
Because if we're going levels 1 through 20 or even like levels 1 through 3, There's a progression, and I think the progression has to be more than just numbers on a page.
There's character development in addition to number development.
Unless you're playing an absurdist game where like the point is to be one note and everybody is that.
Where there are 5 Alexes at the table.
We were all Alex at one point when we were playing our shitty dwarves game.
Alex is the pinnacle of he's the peak. You know what I mean? He's the end of Nirvana.
I aspire to that.
Exactly.
I will fail consistently. So yeah, my number 1 and my top 5, and you don't know what my 4-3-2 is at this point.
It's okay.
Is backgrounds in the rare ones. I think they knocked it out of the fucking park.
Absolutely.
So
next up on my list was the items. What's your favorite item?
I have nothing to say about the items.
I was really unimpressed.
Yeah.
Frankly, I was really upset that there was no undead themed items.
That seems like a strong claim. Is that true?
I checked the book like 5 times.
Okay.
Please, if there's something, there's not a section at least.
They're sprinkled in, right?
You'd imagine there'd be a section devoted to items of
like
the
a toolbox
undead
or something.
Just like they did for the good guys.
Yeah.
I hate calling them.
Slayer's catalog has a bunch of items.
Exactly.
So that's what I was thinking of.
But besides that, there's no undead catalog, which is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the necromancy tag on any of these. One of these.
Well, none of them are. They're all focused on slaying. They're all focused on slaying undead. That's the point of all of them. The one item that really, really stood out to me was this picture of the peachwood sword. And I started reading the background of peachwood and stuff like that. And to me, it's a material that's absolutely fascinating.
It's got the precious tag.
Yeah.
That's a new one to me.
So basically peachwood is like this sacred wood that comes from this tree only grown in monasteries or something like that. And it has this magical property to hurt undead creatures, but that magical property ceases to exist if it ever touches metal.
Okay.
To me, that's like so cool. Like they talk about how the woodworkers have to use non-metallic tools.
I'd love to see that in the Rage of Elements book coming up. With the plane of metal that we're about to see.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Items inform the setting and vice versa.
So yeah, peachwood. They have a weapon, the peachwood talisman, as well as the peachwood sword, or peachwood weapon, I guess. It's an incredibly high level material though, which was kind of surprising. It's like leveled. It's like a 8 material 8+. So the peachwood weapon is a 12.
Oh, it's uncommon.
Level,
it's not even rare.
12th level item.
Okay.
I don't know. Just
really cool. I think as a general rule, I don't get excited about magic items, which sounds dumb because that's part of like, you show up to a convention game and you have 10,000 XP to, purchase magical items in previous editions. And it's like, wow, that's great. So I can get the staff of greater fire, or I can get this, butt plug of lightning bolts. Just magic items used to be exciting, but the more I play,
butt plug of lightning bolts. Oh man!
The more I play this game, the less
that needs
interesting.
to become a sticker. We're gonna make a sticker.
I know we have artist friends out there.
Butt plug of lightning bolts. I love that so much.
But the more I play this system, the more interested I am in backgrounds and fucking archetypes, and I'm less interested in like the tchotchkes. Like talismans, I know we have our differing opinions on the efficacy of talismans, but
that just sounds like the differing opinions of the efficacy of talismans sounds like a scholarly article that we could write one day.
I didn't mean it to sound as highfalutin as all that.
I love it.
I can't get excited about these items. So is this an honorable mention, or is this something you actually had on your list?
You gave me 5 categories.
Right.
Item was one of them. So I picked.
So this wasn't a pleasant category for you, is what I'm hearing?
No,
you were just kind of disappointed.
I was a little disappointed. Yeah.
What was it you were hoping to see that you didn't get out of this?
Undead focused items, like items undead people use, items an undead party could use.
Yeah, like an item that would be pertinent to a ghoul, but a ghost wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I
Something
dig that.
like that.
So,
or like a necromancer's bone staff, or like a cool. I remember in First Edition Pathfinder they had the robe of bones, which was one of those bones.
I remember that one.
It was one of those robes with patches where you could pull off a patch, throw it on the ground, and it becomes like a skeleton or something like that. Imagine a robe literally made of bones, and then you whenever you cast a whenever you cast a necromancy spell, you can pull off one of the 99 bones made to make the vest, and it empowers the summon, or it empowers the summon undead or whatever, like something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. They're
Tools and tricks.
I'm going to be chewing on that one for a while because I agree. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I kind of skinned the items, and I didn't. Nothing really grabbed me. So I don't want to shit talk the items here. It just didn't work for me with my personality.
No, yeah, like if you're playing an undead slayer, or if you're playing a game that's focused about killing on the undead, then some of these are really, really freaking cool, frankly. But they're so hyper focused on killing the undead that I was really surprised and then disappointed that there wasn't a reciprocal chapter on cool
I'm looking right now at page 13. It talks about tools and symbols of the dead. There's a half a page dedicated to arsenals of the living, and there's another half a page to tokens of the dead. So it sounds like it was on their radar. It just doesn't feel like it stuck the landing for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no things. To me, the difference is, there are items here with stats and item levels that I as a player can pull from. Yeah. Like, you gave me so many options to play an undead player, but I don't have items to go along with it.
The items that I read in this book feel like I would be more comfortable seeing them on Archives of Nethys, buried into the rest of the items that are available throughout all the other books. When I see items in this specific book, I kind of want to read them in this book and have it be relevant to everything else in this book. And I feel like I was missing that. So either I was just too dumb to make the connections, or it wasn't there, or somewhere in between.
Yeah. So I guess give me your next one on your list of things you like.
Oh, okay. Number 4. Now that we've done number 1, I'm going to give you number 4. So there's a 20-page adventure in this book.
Yep.
And okay. All right. I got to focus here. It's called March of the Dead. It's 20 pages, and it's an adventure.
Yeah.
It's broken down into 3 parts, and each of the 3 parts served a specific function to speak to the material elsewhere in this book. So, for instance, let's flip to the page here. Come here a little bit.
Yeah, I only skimmed it. I didn't read the whole thing in depth.
Because it was the very first thing I went to when I bought this fucking book, because I'm like, you're going to make me pay $50 to $60 for a crunch book, and you're giving me a 20-page adventure?
Right.
Why? And I had to figure out why before, I decided whether I wanted to like it or not. So it's 3rd level. What 3rd level means is you get to play your character that has a class, and once you hit 2nd level, you get an archetype. So you get to be some kind of undead. So the very adventure in here allows you to use stuff you're reading elsewhere in the book. So that's one great thing. What else? The background of the adventure is informed by the canon material elsewhere in Paizo. So you're reading about like specific locations that have specific necromantic influence at specific power levels. And that all of that exists within a particular moment in the history of Golarion, where the plot of this adventure is relevant to that. This adventure couldn't really have happened at any other point in Golarion's history. You might be able to fudge it, but it's very specific to time and place.
Interesting.
Which means this adventure has an identity unto itself. I think that's important for all adventures, and to get towards the specific and away from the generic is kind of a recurring theme of mine. There are 3 clean parts to this adventure: part 1, part 2, part 3. The first part is heavily exploratory. The second part that you referred to, the castle defense, we're fighting zombies thing, one wave after wave after wave, that's an endurance run. So that lets you test out all the crunch of your character and all the crunch of your archetype. And if you're playing the skeleton Ancestry, you get to just kind of you get to stress test the stuff you built into your character. That's part 2. And part 3 is a combination exploration and counter. And that's when you go up against the BBG of that particular adventure, which I won't spoil here. But it's just, it's delicious how it was broken down. And you get to just sample 3 different parts of the Pathfinder experience. Mystery and tension is a big theme of part 1. Life or death struggle is part 2. You are empowered and proactive with the knowledge that you've acquired in part 3. So it ends on that heroic high note because let's face it, this is a heroic fantasy game. We're supposed to feel that way. And this is the game that knows exactly what it is. There was a missed opportunity I felt with this adventure. It didn't deal with downtime. And I feel like when you're talking about necromancy and rituals and the summoning of things and taking time to do things that have an effect in the world of necromancy, that should have had a place in this adventure, and it didn't.
Yeah.
So that's the only singular thumbs down I had for this entire adventure. There's a details chart on page 194 in the adventure that says, GM, here's some tools to get your to spook your players out. So there's a little bit of a game mastery guide approach to some of the notes within this adventure for the GM.
Which probably would be really good for newer DMs to run this adventure.
Yeah.
And kind of get those notes from the writers of the adventure themselves. You know,
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
almost like,
And even
like
for
input.
practice GMs, it's sort of a reminder that the things practice GMs take for granted that everybody knows, everybody doesn't know that.
Yeah,
you know, because
absolutely.
we're all at varying levels of expertise in this system. Disease, conditions. You have escalating monster types throughout the adventure. You get to choose a what they call a holdout location for the tower defense portion. And you have like 6 different options. So you can literally choose the building that you're going to hide in and defend while these waves come on. Not all these buildings are created equal. Some are definitely tougher than others, and you have varying levels of protection within them. So you have to make smart decisions that affect the encounter mode you're about to go into. So that's cool. There are time of day encounters. There are location-based encounters. All of these are different design philosophies as you're creating adventures. There's underground dangers. There's hazards. There are hazards, both physical and
Psychological?
no, I'm thinking more like curses. Haunts.
Oh, yeah.
They call them haunts.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So like spectral happenings that are anchored to a place, and you can go around them. And if you go through them, you have to interact with them. That's different from like a cave-in or a rock fall.
Absolutely.
Which they have natural hazards like that as well. There's a unique undead NPC in this adventure. So it's not just like, hey, look, here's a souped up ghoul, that sort of thing. And at the very end, there's loose ends by design. So you can go tie them up in future adventures. So this is number 4 on my list instead of just being an honorable mention because, and I think back to my college days in this. Do you remember when you took like a life science course? It was like maybe like a 4-unit course. The first 3 units are academic, and you talk about like biology out of the textbook. Biology is a bad example. Let's say chemistry.
Whatever.
And then that 4th unit was actually a lab, and you had to go apply all the stuff in the lab, and you had to mix shit, and you had to blow your eyebrows off based on the knowledge that you learned.
Yeah, in high school, I went to culinary school, and
Okay.
It's pretty much the same thing.
It's probably flipped, I imagine.
No, you did book learning.
Okay.
About like the proper way to do things, the proper way to cut things, the proper terminology, the proper this and that. And then for the second half, you would go and work with your hands and like learn how to cut stuff and learn how to practice
Exactly.
what you preached. Yeah.
And if you think of like 4 players around the table, all have different, undead beastie builds. They've got to stress test it. They got to figure out how it works and all that. This adventure is a lab, and it walks you through hazards. It walks you through conditions. It walks you through like a kind of gothic terrain that you would associate.
I really love that idea of an adventure being a lab.
A laboratory,
to test your character out in.
Can you imagine if they did this in Secrets of Magic? If they
Oh
did
my
this
gosh.
in Guns and Gears? If they did this type of book that they're coming out with,
Yeah.
and Rage of Elements is coming out later this year. I want to see 20-page adventures that are lab experiments, so you can have all of the different boxes checked as you go through an adventure. And then the players can be like, I just had a complete experience. I didn't have one adventure which was all about hazards, or one adventure which was all about trekking through the wilderness and exploration mode. It's like you get it all in a 4 to 5 hour adventure chunk.
Yeah.
Goblin quotes.
Goblin quotes.
So I'm super pleased about the idea of the adventure. I'm pleased with the execution to a lesser extent, but I'm still pleased with it. The one fucking thing they missed was downtime. And I want to see necromancy downtime in a lab experiment.
And frankly, you probably couldn't have it at 3rd level and have it be justified. Right?
I don't know.
Mechanically, there's not a lot of downtime you can do at 3rd level to have a really big impact on the game.
Okay, if that's true, okay, I get it.
I don't
But
know.
there's so many books I haven't gone through, and I can't help but wonder if maybe they're getting to it. Like low-level downtime shouldn't be irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like world-shakingly powerful, but lab space.
That's fair.
Something.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know,
And there is a
we
lot
had
of
everything else. Why not that?
Yeah, there is a lot of downtime activities you can do from this book.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And going into a haunted village and like generating an income. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm making shit up at this point. So yeah,
okay.
that's my number 4.
Sweet. So let's talk about monsters.
Monsters?
Because I'm sure
Are there monsters in this book?
there's a couple monsters in this book. So I'm just gonna start throwing monsters at you. I'll talk about my favorite one right up front, and then we can just go back and forth.
Are they favorite? Are they your favorites because they have just amazingly bitchin' artwork in here?
The art
Or
is
is it scat blocks?
fucking incredible in
The
this
artwork
book.
is stunning.
So one of my favorite one shots I ever wrote was this. I went through the first edition Pathfinder. I love liches, as we know, and I went through the first edition Pathfinder Bestiary. And in first edition, the lich's spellcasting modifier was based off of charisma. So I love killing my players. So I went in there and I found what's the monster with the highest charisma in the entire book, and it turned out the nymph of all things. Had the highest charisma naturally. So I just took the lich. I took the lich.
You liched a nymph?
Archetype, and I liched a nymph. And then through creating this adventure path, I fell in love with the idea of necromantic
Primal?
nature. Yeah, necromantic primal.
Necromantic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why the Verdanites are my favorite part of this bestiary. They're on
Is
page,
that a word?
Yeah,
Verdanites?
they're on page 164.
What kind of undead are they? Are they like a skeleton or a
They're
ghoul?
plant undead.
They're plant undead.
Yeah, at page 164.
Okay, that's just fucking with my head.
Yeah, so basically the idea is when humans chop down a forest or something like that, it creates a lot of hard feelings and anguish. Here we go. Verdorite.
Okay.
And they have this awesome leaf creature, and also these sea creatures that are like these
Those are crazy undead whales. Like
crazy undead
pod of dead
whales that are all
whales.
like they've got the ribs showing and they're bloated and full of pus and stuff like that. And the idea is basically
hot.
all of the destruction of nature, all that negative emotion it creates within nature, then comes back to bite the hand that hurt it. And I really, really love that idea. Like the necrotic nature coming back to fight against the humans in this dark and twisted way.
Sure.
That it's a way to create an antagonist out of nature while also creating an antagonist out of the people that caused it.
Necromantic eco-terrorist.
Yes. And I'm a big fan of, as someone who's really, really passionate about the outdoors and passionate about the environment and stuff like that.
I'm passionate about dead things.
I really love this idea brought to life in an RPG.
Yeah. So Verdorites is a classification of critters in this book.
Yes. And so the Waldgeist, I don't know what words are. Words are hard. So we all know what a cockatrice is, right?
Yes.
Cockatrice pecks you and you turned into stone.
Yeah.
Petrifies you.
Chicken Medusas.
Yeah. Yes. Well, this has an ability called lignify.
Lignify. You're pulling out all the $5 words.
Where instead
some of them exist, most of them don't.
Yeah. So basically what it does is when it hits you, you make a check, a save.
Okay.
And then if you fail the save, you lose one action, which is really scary.
Yeah.
And then
I'm not okay with that.
If you lose all 3 of your actions, you become lignified, which means you're petrified except
I'm afraid of Kingmaker all of a sudden.
You're petrified except you're wood now.
Uh-huh.
How cool is that?
That's different. I do like that. I dig that.
That is fucking rad.
Okay,
you become
I can see
a tree.
why you like those guys.
And then I'm not even done. And then so in Magic the Gathering, there's this planeswalker named Ren. And what Ren is a nymph, and what they do is they're called Ren and a number. So Ren and 6, Ren and 7. What they do is they're a nymph who basically turns a tree into a mecha suit and then walks around like fighting in this tree mecha suit. That's what he does too. So they could touch a tree and don it as armor, like they get sucked into it, and then now they're like this big Trent that like smashes you, and then if you destroy it, it just deals HP damage to the suit, and it can pop out and just do it again.
I'm just seeing like Pacific Rim redone with Groots.
Yes, exactly. Oh, Groot Pacific Rim is like It's all of my favorite fucking things.
Yeah.
Just combined into one.
There's a weird
beautiful
undead
stat
goblin
block.
in there. I can't remember the name of it, but like his head's on fire and he's like surrounded by smoke and smog.
Yes.
And he uses that to obscure his movements, but those beady little, flaming eyes kind of float through. They're yeah.
All right, I got a lot to go over, so give me your next one.
Okay, let's see. We did that one. I'll just go to my number 3, hazards in general. So I like how they treated the hazards in this book. They're all, we just used the words, they're all haunts. And they all have a haunt tag specifically. So when you're looking at different things in this Pathfinder universe, you got to read the tags because that will tell you how to use them, where to use them, and kind of the experience you're about to put in front of your players. This giant collection of haunted hazards reminds me a lot of the old Grim Tooth's Traps books that used to float around
I have no idea
20, 30 years ago.
about.
There's no reason why you would.
Okay.
It's a grognard thing, I guess. Ain't nothing but a grognard thing.
No, that's another shirt, dude. Fucking lightning bolt butt plugs and ain't nothing but a grognard thing. Oh man, this show is full of bangers.
Yeah, I offer no value to this world. Throw away one-liners. The thing about Grim Tooth's Traps that they were just sort of, they were kind of masturbatory in their insidious effectiveness to murder player characters. That's all it was. They were kind of one note in that sense. And however simple or complicated the traps were, that's all they were. But these haunts, they're mechanically dynamic. And for every singular haunt, for every singular hazard, you go through a lot of rules that are offered in this book. And you have a number of solutions to get through them. It's not simply like this trap is designed for people who have a high reflex save. And if you don't, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Those are just super obnoxious. So all of these mechanically dynamic traps also have built-in stories around them. When you read the language around the haunt, there are people associated with them. There are creatures associated with them. There are curses associated with them. There's terrain, topography, there's locations, and it's all relevant. So the hazard that has a mechanical impact on your character, that's a character too. It's an NPC in my brain. It occupies that same space. You interact with it the same way you might an NPC, which is to say dynamic. And it informs the scene. So the other cool thing is when you have like simple and complex hazards, they enter initiative with you.
Yeah.
So they trigger, they reset, and they do things through encounter mode, through initiative and combat. That makes it even more like an NPC you're interacting with. Typically hazards kind of just like in the old days, traps just felt like bestiary stat blocks. They're just sort of like what you see is what you get. And it's kind of a static thing. And
the
they're
rock falls on you. And
it's reactionary.
You either get hurt or you don't.
Yeah, these hazards are more proactive as they do things in the initiative order. So where was I going with that? There's multiple ways to resolve an encounter within the initiative order. And one in particular is called Grasping Dead. It's pretty easy to grok. It's basically a bunch of zombie hands that, reach out of the ground, grab your ankles, and try to pull you down.
Yes.
There's really nothing super imaginative about that yet, right? However, within this singular hazard, you are using religion as a skill, occult as a skill, reflex as a save, bludgeoning as a damage type, immobilized as a condition, escape as an action, suffocation as that's not a condition. What is that? Bad things that kill you.
Category.
And on top of that, this hazard activates and it reactivates.
Right.
So I just rattled off about 9 maybe different tags, if you want to think of them that way. That's not literally what they are. That creates a dynamic encounter instead of just you slip, you fall into a pit, and something stabs you through the spleen.
Right.
Next character.
Next character, yeah.
So hazards are my number 3 because they're dynamic. They inform the adventure. They can't be throwaway. By definition, they're not throwaway because they have stories around them.
Right.
And it's all about the stories, man.
So a bunch of stories, man.
So page 64 through 69, that's a 5-page spread of different kinds of hazards. And when you get to the complex ones, they just get so juicy. And you can make new characters out of those hazards. So yeah.
Rad.
I think that's I've rattled off my number 5, my number 4, my number 3, and my number 1.
Cool.
And some honorable mentions.
All we have left are 2.
2 and 3.
So the Cybre. The Siabrae.
Can you spell these words you're making up?
Siabrae.
I will take your word for
The
it.
Siabrae.
Fucking names.
So this is following that note of nature turning necromantic. This was like a contender. Like this is neck and neck with the other one that I talked about. Effectively, what happens is a druid or a nature-focused witch is at the end of their wit trying to defend nature and fails and decides to go the dark route, giving their soul up in exchange to this thing called the welcome the blighted soul. And basically, they trade their soul for this necromantic power that infuses them. This is a template that you can apply to anything you want. And they become these like powerful necromantic druid nature entities that sometimes actually do what they're intending to do and repulse the thing threatening their garden or threatening their area, but oftentimes it leads them to an incredible madness. And they begin to protect and create a macabre simulacrum of what they intended to keep safe in the first place. You know what I mean? They end up soiling the ground that they tried to protect. So it's a kind of like a cautionary tale. What do they call that? A Faustian bargain.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just love that. The art for it is freaking rad.
Yeah, it makes me think of that one time when I went to college and my dad told me to study to be a fighter. And I said, no, screw you. I'm going to study to be a druid. And then I got my degree, realized I couldn't use it. So I decided to be a warlock. Because, you got to get paid, right?
Exactly. So again, it follows that necromancy in nature. And I just think it's freaking rad. And
so I'm guessing there's like a whole
one.
block of monsters back to back to back to back that are all sort of that thing, necromantic nature.
Those are the only ones actually I found in the entire book.
Okay.
Yeah, I maybe I missed
more
one.
Forthcoming.
Yeah, maybe I missed one. But it's kind of a niche thing, I think, for the most part.
Well, there's honorable mentions. The undead adjustments on page 72 and 73. They basically function as templates for bestiary creatures.
Absolutely.
So you can kind of like do exactly what you're saying on owl bears and whatever.
And what's cool about the way that Pathfinder's designed is that templates have never worked better than before.
Yeah, I was leery of them before.
Yeah, before they warped the game in ways because it wasn't designed around a level
Unintended
system.
consequences.
Yeah, I mean the CR system of first edition had a lot of flaws, and the CR system of second edition is a lot more streamlined because it's all relative to the player party.
Yeah,
and I mean like empowering and weakening monsters is baked into the system. Yeah. So turning them undead is not that far of a jump.
It's not that far. I did see some entries that concerned me a little bit. Yeah. I don't have any I can point to.
Maybe.
But when you're adjusting bestiary critters and making them undead, and you give them certain like ghoul-like abilities or the ability to fly when
undead
the bestiary critter doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And immunities, right? Yeah. Stuff like that. I'm worried about encounter balance at that point. So I'd like to look more into that because I think being able to slap undead templates on the tarrasque could be it could be a thing.
Slow down there.
That's come on,
insane.
You don't want to see a skeleton tarrasque? I want to see a skeleton.
I can imagine a story where Tar-Baphon basically turns the tarrasque undeads and then controls it and then throws it at the world, and the world has to defend themselves against it while he's doing stuff on the side. That'd be a pretty cool adventure.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah. So why don't you give me your next?
I've only got one left.
Okay, so
my number 2. Or were you going to say something?
No, I got more monsters to talk about. These are just honorable mentions,
okay,
though.
Got it.
Yeah, so
hi.
Combusted. Combusted are a terrifying idea.
Sounds explosive. Man, you're good at like flipping right to the page.
Oh, I had this one.
Oh, you got... That's right. You got the sexy extra edition.
Bookmarks. Yeah. But yeah, the Combusted is literally a person on fire.
That's worthy of an entry.
Constantly reliving the pain of being burned alive.
Oh, that's garbage.
And as someone who has been burned many times in my life, trigger warning. When I was a kid, my mom had a shop where she made we made cabinets downstairs, and upstairs she made upholstery and stuff like that. We had these huge cushioned tables where you would like make drapes and stuff like that.
This isn't code for methamphetamines, is it?
Nope. These are upholstery
Just
tables.
checking.
I know, Florida. But these are like upholstery tables, and I would lay on them when I was a kid. I was bored or whatever, and not once but twice I rolled over and my face touched a hot iron. So, and I've been burned multiple times all over my body just through life happening, because I'm a clumsy individual. So I have like this weird, I have a really negative relationship with being burned. I mean, everyone does, right? So when I read the entry for this, I was absolutely terrified. Yep. It's the only entry in the entire book that literally gave me chills. So yeah.
That sounds awful.
It's pretty cool. And it's only a 3rd level monster, which is kind of lame.
Not in your imagination.
Yeah, not in my mind. That's a
like
12.
1 in front of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then the last one I put down is the polong.
You have to spell it. I don't know what words you're using.
Polong. The polong.
Sure. What is a polong?
Okay.
None of this works in Scrabble.
Okay.
You're just cheating if you use this on a Scrabble board.
As someone with here it is right here. As someone with like terrible.
Oh, that thing. Yes.
Yeah. So cool, right?
I wish we could show pictures.
Yeah, I could pop some on the screen, maybe.
Okay. God, art.
But yeah, so the polong is like this little. What's cool about the polong is you can actually have it as a familiar, which is really cool. They give you rules for it.
Sure.
Like
describe what it is. So
okay,
people don't
it's
get
a
lost.
little vial of red liquid, and in that vial, if you summon the polong, a beautiful woman appears out of in this little vial, and drenched in blood, and you the owner or creator of the polong have to feed it a little bit of your blood every day, and it talks to you as if it's you are its parent, so it calls you mama or daddy or whatever, which is weird on its own.
This is getting weird.
Yep. But you can uncork it and basically send them to haunt someone and hurt them mentally and physically throughout a town or something like that. They're like these little.
So they're like little blood pixies that.
Little blood pixies. Okay. Exactly. That terrify and torture people.
Okay.
And I thought that was
Sounds
rad.
hot.
And I definitely want a pet.
Yeah.
Polong. So you could bet that one of my characters that's not so good in the future will have a polong familiar.
I'm seeing a Beastmaster with these kinds of things instead of like wolves and foxes and shit.
Tainted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
like a pickled punk, a polong.
Yeah. Like one of the things in here is the undead. Like there's a whole section in the book for undead companions where you can make like. Or you can make like instead of having a wolf, you can have a skeleton or a vampiric animal or a ghoul or something like that. Not a ghoul, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
Mindless undead companion. That was an honorable mention as well. I just think it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody loves a beastie and then a little critter that you can curl up next to the fire with.
So take us out with your number 2.
Number 2 was almost my number 1. So okay, so this is a skeleton. Ancestry. If you're a vampire or a mummy or a wight or a ghost or a the one I keep forgetting, the Grave Knight, those are archetypes.
Those aren't. Well, I mean, you named 2 that aren't actually archetypes.
I thought they were all archetypes.
The wight and the Grave Knight aren't archetypes.
Okay,
it's okay. Don't worry about it.
All right.
We know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So those beasties are all archetypes: ghost, ghoul, lich, mummy, skeleton, vampire, zombie. But there's an actual ancestry, and that ancestry is a skeleton. Why is that important? Why do I give a shit? Because with an ancestry comes a heritage. With the heritage comes diversity. Skeletons in this game pass the, what did I call that? I got to come up with a name for this. So when I talk about being able to line up 100 fighters on the wall and they're distinct from one another and they feel different, they look different, they act different. There's ways to make that happen. And there's other ways where you just vanilla all 100 fighters and there's the same fucking character over and over again. When you have an ancestry with a variety of heritages, you start getting distinct skeletons one after another. And they start to pass this lineup test. I think that's important. And I wish they would have done it for the vampires, for the ghouls. All ghouls look the same in my brain using this archetype because there's only so many feats to go around. And they're basically, I'm hungry feats. What are we going to do about it? or I need to move faster feats. What are we going to do about it? It's just, they're super vanilla. I'm happy that I can play a ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
I wish a ghoul was an ancestry. That way I can have different kinds of ghouls, the aquatic ghoul versus the traditional graveyard ghoul versus a million other kinds of ghouls that are probably floating around in monster manuals.
I guess the argument is you can, though, because if you play an aquatic style ancestry that becomes a ghoul, you could just be that. But then they also have monsters that are aquatic ghouls in the book as well.
They do, right? And it's the Lacanian or Lacedon or whatever it's called in there for the aquatic ghoul. They have specific things that they can do that you cannot replicate with the feat choices that are presented in this book.
Right.
This is not the book we're talking about.
I've had one too many seltzers, Eric.
I swear you spiked it. So yeah, the idea of the skeleton as an ancestry, I wish all of the undead options had been ancestries.
That might have been a little too hard to balance too.
I don't know. I think they can balance whatever they want. Certain feats allow you to do things that just feel different. Like you can use your body as a skeleton. It's called well armed, and you like pull out a rib and throw it at somebody. I don't know.
Love the puns so much. They did such a great job with the puns. Like the for the skeleton and for the zombie. Did you see the entries for the zombie?
I did. I don't remember much about it.
Full of puns. Oh, keep going. I'm gonna pull it up.
So yeah, you got things like well armed where you can manipulate your body to create a desired effect in combat. You've got this thing called a rejuvenation token you can take. There's transference of consciousness. As you get higher to 13th and 17th level, you get feats that allow you to emulate class-specific effects using necromancy as a space component. So if you want to be a skeleton that kind of feels like a druidic kind of a skeleton at later levels, you have options for that. If you want to, do I think there's like a divine option to be more of like a skeleton that does cleric-y things. You can go that way. So again, they pass the lineup test when you put them up against the wall. Can't do that with archetypes. Archetypes are very straightforward. They're to an archetype, every if an archetype is the hammer, what's that expression? To a hammer, everything's a nail.
When all you have is a hammer, everything looks
like a nail, right? Yeah. So that's archetypes because it's kind of it doesn't give you variety of options as you progress through an archetype. Ancestry is followed by heritage, followed by archetypes. That's when you get the spread of actionable design at the table. You get a
spectrum at that point.
Yeah. And, your skeleton's going to look different from my skeleton and so on and so forth. So I think going forward, I wish all of the undead types, if they do another book like this, which Rage of Elements is coming out, I hope they do more of the ancestries and less of the archetypes when it comes to like actual beastie creatures.
Interesting.
So that's my soapbox on that one. And I think that would have been my number one if all of those things had been ancestries.
Gotcha.
So I just want more options so everything can pass the lineup test.
The lineup test. We're gonna come up with a cool name for that.
There's got to be if you put 100 or something on there and they're different, we're good. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So like some of the funny names for the feats on the zombie are Ankle Biter. Ravenous Charge is kind of weird. Brains! ! And then Out of Hand. Just zombie hand.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
So last but definitely not least, I'll just zoom through the last little bits of notes that I have here.
Are there more monsters?
Yeah, there's one more I forgot to mention. It's called the Hoard Lich. So it's a lich that's made of like a huge collection of bones.
Okay.
And they can reform their lich body with these bones. Okay. And like reform their body and change it and stuff like that. They're kind of more like a beefier, not melee lich because they're a lich. They have to be kind of casters by order, but like they have like a cool.
That's kind of cool. Like you walk up to the site of like a mass massacre, a massacre, and the corpses are there, and that's gruesome and it's sad and it's terrible. And look, it's one creature that
just crawls or the lich like creates a massacre and then absorbs all of the skeletons.
It looks like it's a bunch of separate skeletons starting to crawl out, and then you start to like realize it's one entity.
They all like form together, and it's the
that could be fun. And then they like create sort of like a dungeon experience around you as they sort of start wrapping around, and you got to grab onto this rib cage as you're slashing at this face over here,
right?
And then another skeleton tail whips up. That could be fun.
It'd be rad.
Yeah, turn that into a hazard too.
I like
Hazard within a creature.
Yeah.
Going deep.
Going so deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I covered pretty much everything, and this episode is going to be freaking heckin' long anyway. So,
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite feat. You gave me categories, mister. And I'm
I didn't give you nothing.
God damn it, I'm going to use my last category.
All right, what's your last category?
Bonds of Death. It's the Reanimator archetype. It might be one of the most powerful feats I've ever read, because what it allows you to do is have two summoned creatures at the same time, and at 8th level.
I think I've heard about this on another podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, what it allows you to do is summon an undead creature and then summon another undead creature and sustain them with the same action.
Yeah.
You can do that already. I think. Don't quote me. It's like a 18th level wizard. It's like conjuration wizard ability.
Sure. But you get this one way earlier, don't you?
At 8th level.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And right around that area is where you start to get some of the most powerful summons for Summon Undead, the spell. So the Reanimator archetype in general is really good.
Yeah.
And especially
handle with care.
Yeah, handle with care. And with that, goblins, I bid you adieu. It's been a pleasure. We've probably talked your ear off for more than an hour and a half at this point. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you had a good time, you want to support the pod, maybe drop a sub.
Maybe teach us how to count to 5.
Maybe teach us how to count to 5. Maybe drop on the Patreon where we do a bunch of cool shit and you can talk to us and hang out. But most importantly, keep it weird.
Keep it weird.